to have a conversation with them and say, listen, there's a new sheriff in town, and we're doing things differently around here. And we've realized, you know what, we're gonna start changing things. You have that conversation with them, and that's it. You're off and running. The key to it is being consistent. Some children, they understand, mum and dad, they come to this place every year. We're out of control. So we all get sat down on the couch, a family meeting, and things are going to change around here. And within 3 days, we're back to normal. So we can sit down on the couch. Yes, mum and dad, we'll do whatever you say. Yes, we agree with that, because they know 3 days later, because mum and dad are inconsistent, it's just back to business as usual. And so consistency is key. It's never too late, and you can change things now, but the key is to be consistent. And the fourth thing there is commitment. Long-term investment is where parenting and training your children up where you're going to see the benefits. Rather than instant results, we want them now. It's the idea that I'm going to start the process now, and we're going to see little improvements. You don't turn into a drill sergeant all of a sudden, and your wooden spoon turns into a whip or a cord, a whip of nine cords. It's the idea that we're going to be consistent, be committed, and we're going to see change and improvement over time. It's not going to be instant success, instant results, but you would start the process now and be consistent. You're going to see little improvements because the Bible works. Can you say amen? And you can trust that process. Don't revert back to the old system. Say the Bible doesn't work. You need to be committed over the long term. And so you're going to be able to get the victory there. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16.
All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness.
Okay, every child can be trained and have their will shaped without breaking their spirit. That's what the Bible says. That you don't have to break their spirit. We don't want children who are just have no confidence, no dominion in life, and that's what happens when there's abuse, when there's manipulation, when there's mind games, and when there's just inconsistency. It's broken spirits. But parents who are consistent, who are committed to the Word of God, to the training of the Word of God, can have children who are behaved, have dominion, have strong spirits. And so the Bible offers tried and true principles, besides experimenting with the most vulnerable. You could go with the latest fad of our generation or the latest fad of 2024 on how to train your children up. But if you use the Bible as your guidepost, there's a promise there that you're going to have successful children who are going to live lives of righteousness. Proverbs 19, verse 18.
Discipline your children while there is hope, otherwise you will ruin their lives.
Okay, so chasten your son while there is hope. The idea that as time passes, you're losing opportunities every day with your children, especially when they're young. I think the ages that are most profound are when your child is 8 to 13 years. They're the most important years of their life. They're the greatest opportunity you have once they hit their teens. Things begin to change. Chemistry takes place. And I'm not saying, well, we stop disciplining our children at 13 because, Pastor said that the hormones kick in and things begin to change. But the idea is that it gets, the strategy changes. It gets a lot difficult. And I'm not speaking from experience. My oldest child is 10. This is what I've read. This is what I've heard. This is what I've experienced from afar. But the idea is that 8 to 13 is where you really want to, obviously from the very beginning, but you want to take every opportunity that you're given. The idea of foolishness being bound up, it takes a while to untangle that. Something that's bound up is, it's bound up into a ball, and it takes a while to untangle that, straighten that out. And the battle of the wills is another issue. You have some children that have strong wills and there's a spiritual battle at work, and very often it takes time. You need to take the opportunities now while they're presented. Psalms 127, 3-5.
Children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates.
Okay, so the idea of arrows being shaped, I used this illustration a number of years ago, I think, in a series that we did, something to do with firing arrows. I can't remember the title of it. I don't know if you remember, but I grabbed one of those sticks out of the pot there, and they're all bent and twisted, and the idea of arrows that are being fired is that before they ever get to the quiver, with the tip and the feather that keeps them straight, is that these the timber that they use is shaped. It's forced into a particular shape so that it's going to fly straight. And so you see, obviously you don't just see dudes rocking around with a quiver full of arrows and a bow, but the idea of children who are making good decisions, who are respectful, all those sorts of things, is their arrows being straightened out, being prepared to be fired. And so parents are obviously being intentional. They're twisting and shaping them so that they will fire straight. And so before an arrow ever gets to a quiver to be fired out, you want to straighten that out so that it's going to fly straight, it's going to hit its target. And it's the parent's role to make sure those arrows are straightened out before they are fired from your home. And lastly, Ephesians 2, verse 1-3, which is our main text.
And you he made alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience, among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lusts of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the others.
Okay, so just a reminder for us that we are all in the same boat when it comes to a sinful nature, our children included. And it help us to recognize that we need to help us to recognize that we need to recognize that. And that it's not automatic, it's not by osmosis. You bring them to church and they're going to just somehow end up as good Christian citizens. Having grown up in church, I know that firsthand not to be the case. In fact, about 99% of my friends, my peers, are all backslidden today. And I'm not blaming their parents for that. But as I observed, it had a huge part to do with the parents. Parents are no longer in church either. And so it's not automatic. It's not, well, I grew up in church and so I'm just going to somehow be a Christian. That's not the case for me either. We need to recognize they're sinful by nature, and it's our intentional training up, disciplining that's going to help shape them and mold them. Does anyone have a question you want to ask? Yes, Narelle.
In the point where you mentioned where discipline needs to be considered, you mentioned the difference between you need to consider whether it's behavioral or personality. What are ways that you can differentiate that?
Great, yeah. So an example, one of my children, while affectionate, is very boisterous, much like what I was, very boisterous, very rough. And so sometimes they physically hurt people. They're not meaning to, they're not trying to, but they're just, I wouldn't say hurt people, but they're just, they're over, And so I'm not going to, discipline them in that sense for that behavior, because that's part of their personality. They love, and they love, that's how they do that. That's how they show their affection, And so, while at times, sitting down at my desk or whatever it is, and it's like I'm crash tackled from the side, and what is going, and it's just a hug, that's a personality thing. Whereas, obviously a behavioral thing, it's intentional defiance. And so there's just some things in children, and this is where it's consideration, is that parents need to consider the personality of their children. and define what's personality. In other words, that's in them. And again, defiance is in us. Rebellion, sin is in us, but you need to learn to differentiate. And so I'm just giving you an example where it's sometimes an annoying thing. Maybe that's just me being a grumpy old dad. I don't know. But I'm not gonna go to your room. You're in trouble. It's like she is just expressing their love, and that's how they do that. And and there are times where I'll say that's a little bit, and I'm just giving them a nudge just to, so they're not. But it's a personality thing, And so if I go to your room, I'm breaking their spirit, because it's like, well, that's part of who I am in a personality way. And so it's hard to distinguish, but you've got to learn to distinguish those things. And again, talking to your spouse and saying, because sometimes it's like it's a very grey thing. It's like, it's their personality, but they also should learn, and so you've got to also navigate around that. And so, I think the distinguishing marks is that it's defiance, it's rebellion. In other words, it's not just, well, my personality is to not do anything that mum and dad say. Well, that's not a personality thing, that's a defiance thing. That's a behavioural thing. You can learn to, but someone who's just loving, and that's a personality thing. And so you have to learn to distinguish. But at the end of the day, if you're telling them to do something, they must do it. And then you just got to, find a way. Okay, well, this is, sometimes it's 85% personality and 15% they made a decision to just ignore you anyway, because that's my personality. And so you've got to try and work that through. And so it is a bit of a blurry thing, it's a bit of a grey area. Sometimes they mix, and you've just got to draw a line and say, well, you've defied me, you've rebelled, you've disobeyed me, and so there's going to be some form of discipline, but you have to just try and navigate your way through that. I don't know how to better explain that, but that's a very good question. Very good. I guess the key is you have to just sit down with your spouse and consider what are personality things and what are behavioural things. Very good. Anyone else have a question there? Yes, Felinia.
I'm not too sure how to word this question, Pastor, but it's from last week's one. You mentioned in one of your points about when you're raising up your children, like you teach them how to say hello, like to people, and like if they're not saying hello, like they get disciplined for it. When I first got saved, I had like friends that had kids that it's not that they didn't want to say hi, they were a bit too shy to say hi. And if they didn't say hi, they would obviously get disciplined for it. But it got to the point where I felt bad, like that they were getting disciplined because they weren't saying hi to me.
Yeah.
And then I would like come and be like, no, they said hi. But are there, I guess my question is, by us covering up when parents are trying to train up their kids in something like that, are we getting in the way? Are we becoming a barrier with those parents training their kids up? If that makes sense.
I mean, not I don't think that's always awkward. You say you love kids. You say hello, and then it's like it turns into them, getting smacked or getting disciplined. It's like, oh my gosh, So it's always awkward. But I don't know if you'd be getting in the way of, I think at the end of the day it's parents' responsibility, and I don't think anyone else has, if parents are consistent, committed, all those things, can have that much influence that it's impeding on the parents' ability to parent, and train. At the end of the day, if the child doesn't say hello, all right, if it's Auntie Felinia, well, it's your fault. You already know, man. If I can say hello, you better say hello back. Your mum and dad are going to belt you, So, I mean, obviously there's a bit of fun there, in terms of, like, oh, no, they said hello, But I think I would have a bit of fun with the kid and say, you better say hello, man. Mum's coming. She's coming. You better say hello, And I would side with the parents, and try and do that. But, I don't think it's at a level where you're, it's like your parents are coming to you. Well, Felinia, you are a direct you know, it's like passing the buck sort of thing. My kids turn out this way because Auntie Nia, you know, always covered for them. You know, I don't think any parent can blame someone else. You know, but yeah, I mean, if I'm an adult saying hello to a kid and they're not saying hello, I'll probably be, hey, you better, you know, Dad's coming quick. You better say hello. You know, and I'm siding with the parents. But you know, at the end of the day, it's awkward. It's weird. You know, and it's just like, all right, hey, how you going? Yeah, I'm off. But yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think it's that much of an issue. And if parents think so, can you help me out? If they're not saying hello to you, don't cover for them. You know, rat them out to me. Then they're going to say hello to you. But yeah, I don't think it's a big issue. Very good. Anyone have a question? Yes, Sol.
Hey, Pastor, so Proverbs 22, 15, you know, it talks about the rod of correction will drive it far from him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you reckon it's wise to have like a different strategy with your kids? Like not always a rod for every child.
Yes.
Like some of them, the younger ones will probably learn more from a rod, but the older ones probably like taking something away from them that they might like doing, like family nights or family, like something that would they learn from instead
Yes.
of always disciplining them.
I think so. You need to be careful. I mean, this is measured. It's considered. And part of the consideration is how is this also going to impact the other children. But in saying that, again, that's only a small factor. Because I'm the parent. I'm disciplining. And if you don't think it's fair, well, you know what? Fat luck. Fat chance. Or whatever the saying is. My brain's functioning on concrete dust at the moment. So I don't care. I'm the parent, you know, and if you don't think that's fair, well, that's you know, it's none of your business. Why, you know, and so obviously I'm trying to keep discipline private, and you know, and the other kids out of it. And every now and then I catch, you know, one of the kids standing by the door, like, you know, getting you know, sick pleasure out of the fact that their sibling is being disciplined. So then they get in trouble. But no, I think that's considered a measured discipline. Is that some discipline, forms of discipline work better than others on different children, and you're exactly right in that, you know, for some of my children, smacking them, like, yep, give me a smack, get over and done with them, and I'm off again, you know. Others you smack and it's like the end of the world. I can't believe that it's gotten to, you know, it's like they're ready to, you know, and so it's just, you know, and so but then others, it's like you're going to your room, you're missing out on this. That's the end of the world. Whereas you send them to their room, they're like, yep, no worries. You know, they're in there, just sitting on their bed, yep, loving it. You know, and so yeah, you've got to try and consider those things and work out what's gonna be best. That doesn't mean that, well, you know, smacks don't work with Junior, so we're just never going to smack him. You know, and you know, you've got to try things out, and it still has to be to a degree fair on the other children. You know, that it's not, you know, they just get to sit on their bed every time they defy you, and we get belted or we get smacked, and you know, and they know they're onto a good thing, but because they're getting away with, you know, the key is that they're not getting away with misbehaviour, and so you know, I still think physical discipline, you know, the rod, the smack, it still applies to most, if not all children, but again, it's, you know, I think you would adjust according to your children, definitely, without being grossly unfair. Yeah. Very good. Anyone else have a question? Yes, Tanu. Good questions this morning.
Pastor, you touched on just creating those boundaries for our children. What's your thoughts on just sort of shifting furniture around the house or things in the house where children may break, or would you recommend that, or would you sort of just leave things purposely there and just sort of like God putting a tree in the garden and just say don't eat from it? Or would you sort of move it so kids don't break it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good analogy, and I guess I don't have a clear answer, but I guess you're not going to put your favorite. I mean, my poor mum, she had a lot of different trinkets, and I remember one she had a crystal bell that she got for her wedding for a wedding present, and we were a bit older, and they had gone out. Mum and Dad had gone out, and we were mucking around wrestling or something, knocked it and smashed it into pieces. And so then my brother and I are there gluing this crystal bell back together. You know, and it was in like 18 or 20 different pieces. You glue it back together, put it back. Hopefully Mum doesn't notice. She walks, the first thing she sees, who broke my, you know. And she, you know, she was upset and whatever else, you know. Yeah, look, I think there is a bit of wisdom in, you know, when your child begins to walk, you know, they go from crawling to walking. It's like your whole world changes because, you know, this little creature is now on 2 legs and running around everywhere. And so you do need a kid-proof or kid-safe for your house to, you know, obviously you got a table with like glass. It's like thin glass. It's like this. They're going to, you know, gouge their eyeballs out on your coffee table, you know. And so you need to kid-proof it in that sense because they're little children, you know. You know, and then obviously they're learning to walk, and so, you know, you're not going to smack a 2-year-old because he fell over, knocked over, you know, your crystal bell and shattered all over the floor because they're still learning how to walk, you know. But I think as they grow, it's probably age appropriate that it's like, okay, well, Junior's 6 and 7, and again, I'm not going to put an age. I'm not making at 5 they're all good, and then at 6 you start, you know. But the idea is that, okay, we think they're old enough now that we're going to tell them, you're not going to touch those things. You're not going to go in this area. You're not going to go there with your shoes on. You're going to go on the carpet with your shoes on. You know, and you start doing those things, and that's a good opportunity to train them. Hey, these are boundaries, you know. But obviously, when they're 1 and 2 and 3, they're learning to walk. They don't, you know, they're still, you know, doing what little toddlers do. Then it's probably wisdom to kid-proof things and make it safe, and you know, then you know, obviously as they grow, you would start adjusting and expecting them. It's like the idea of changing your expectations. Now they're old enough, I believe, that for me to expect them, no, you're not going to touch that. You're not going to go here. You're going to, you know. And so yeah, I would. It's very age appropriate in your expectation levels. Yeah, very good. But yeah, you know, at some point you need to start doing that, and not just, you know, the whole house is just white walls, you know, and they can go anywhere and, you know, run into the wall, and it's, you know, it's covered in cushions, and yes, no, they need to learn. Very good, Del.
I was going to say on that, we had one child who loved playing with the plug ports on the wall, and so they were like,
he, she.
They were young, like crawling, so like maybe 6 to 8 months.
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
And yeah, we would smack.
Yep.
Them, not like hard.
No, and it was just.
But it was like
a little tap
just
on
a little,
the hand to
yeah,
begin
and
with.
it was like I remember them being really shocked by that. But just that was one thing that we did.
Yeah.
I just can recall, and they were quite young.
Yep.
But it was a danger. But like it's not. We didn't board them up or anything, but we did.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Teach them.
Not,
yep, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, and obviously, you know, the wisdom in that is you're not going to let them touch something's going to kill them. You know what I mean? Yeah, and teaching them those lessons. Very good. Anyone else? Yes, Marcus. Come on, runners. Hey, you guys are moving slow. No, you're not. You've been pretty good.
What are some ways of teaching kids about boundaries? Their first boundary being their skin. When loved ones around them don't understand boundaries. And more especially around where maybe the parents, their lens is like they've been, someone's intruded their boundaries when they were young, and so they're looking through that lens of hurt, and so you have that sort of dynamic. What are some ways of teaching?
Very good question, and we're going to go into that, you know, in the coming weeks, setting boundaries and how to do that. And so I'll answer that question, you know, in the next couple of weeks. I won't go into all of that, but you touched on a very good point, is that when children are vulnerable at a vulnerable age, you know, we ultimately are their covering, we're their protection, you know what I mean? And so I guess the first thing is I'm never putting my children in a position where they are vulnerable to somebody else that's not me. And so, you know, we don't let our kids sleep over other people's houses because we're not willing to, and you can call that, you know, that's wrapping them in cotton wool and whatever else, but we're their parents. We don't trust anyone else like we trust ourselves. And so, there are some boundaries or some positions of vulnerability that we're not willing to put our children in. And so I guess the first thing is that, especially when they're young and they're vulnerable and they're learning about boundaries, I'm not going to put them in positions that they can't deal with other people crossing those boundaries. I'm going to make sure that they're always in a safe environment to learn. And then when there's other people around, they're close to me. I'm not going to allow the people to cross those boundaries into their life as much as I can possibly help it. But then from a very young age, you're teaching them about what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. You talked about skin being their first boundary. So touching, that from mum and dad, hugging, kissing, half the time, when your kids are little, they're in their nappies or whatever, that's the only clothes they have on. Mum and dad are around, that's appropriate, that's normal, that's mum and dad, skin to skin. That's, and obviously we're not naked, but that's family, right? And then, but you're teaching them anywhere, you have your clothes on. I don't let my kids run around naked, out in the park or, at a friend's house or whatever. If my kids are taking their clothes off, in the back, what are you doing? That's inappropriate. You're not at home here, you're at somebody else's house. And so, and even with family, you're not at home. We're at, and again, grandma and grandpa and all that sort of thing. You got to work it out with your spouse. But even still, uncles and aunties, we're not at home. We're at somebody else's house. You keep your clothes on, and you're teaching them that's inappropriate. It's inappropriate to be naked in front of people, other than your family. And even then, we want to see everything. And so you're teaching them the boundary of that, of boundaries of those types of things, but then also touch. And when they're old enough, they need to begin to understand that somebody else hugging you, holding you like I am, that's inappropriate. And then obviously you teach them about private parts and all that sort of thing, and any physical touch around is inappropriate. The moment you scream, you kick, I give you permission. I give you full permission to chuck a tantrum if someone touches you in that area. You scream, you shout, you kick, you punch, you whatever. So you teach as soon as you can teach them those things. That is absolutely it's never appropriate. Unless mum or dad is wiping your bum, because you're changing your nappy or whatever. Never appropriate. And so you want to teach them those boundaries. So we've taught our kids those things, and we've been fortunate enough to have those things reinforced. We took our kids went to a kindy daycare from 3 or 4, and they taught them about boundaries and what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. We would not have put them in places that didn't reinforce those things. And if we thought that they weren't, we would have said, listen, they are not to be in the toilet with any other children. They're not to be, and we'd make sure that they understood that. And if we didn't have confidence that they weren't implementing those things on our behalf, we would have pulled them out instantly. And so just zero tolerance for the crap and the garbage out there of, we're just all in the same bathroom together and all that sort of stuff, and then obviously just being mindful of different people around my children is probably the third thing as well, is that I'm, if I'm not comfortable with certain people, I'm not going, there are people, come to our church, God bless them, they'd visit, but then, and they're you're not going to pick up children. Sorry. We don't know who you are. We don't know where you're from. Don't go near any children. And I don't care if they get offended, never come back. Because our children are the most vulnerable and they're relying on us to protect them. And so that goes for any parent or any adult seeing visitors pick up children, our children. That is not on. That is not, that's not, our ushers will hopefully get to them before they get to the children. But then you as a parent, us as parents, anyone that we don't feel comfortable with, we cannot afford to, I don't want to offend them. They're just hugging them. If you don't feel good about them, sorry, can you put my child down, please? Thank you very much, and Junior, off you go, and you protect your children at any cost. If people get offended, they get offended. So be it, but your child is protected. And so again, you help them, you teach them the boundaries, and when they're not old enough to understand them, you've got to be ruthless. Be absolute. I don't care if it's an uncle, if it's a cousin that's 2 years older than them. I don't care. I don't care who you are. I'm not going to make my child vulnerable when they're still learning about boundaries. It's my God-given responsibility to keep them safe in every environment. I think one of the dangers is we let our guard down with family, and that's a very dangerous thing to do. We cannot view our families as they're beyond reproach and they could never do anything. They absolutely can, and very sadly they do. And so it's like I don't care. I don't care if you're offended. This is my child, and I must protect them, and I'm not gonna make them vulnerable. If I think that I'll deal with wrapping them in. If I'm wrapping them in cotton, I'll deal with that. That maybe I've been overprotective. Then deal with the other extreme. And so I think it's wise as soon as you can teach your children about boundaries, touch. In a park somewhere, someone total random says, "I got this," you scream. I don't care if they say they know you. You've got to try and train them and teach them to do those things. Unfortunately, that's just the world we live in today. And so it's until they get to heaven, they can run amok and go wherever they want, and it's all good. But here on earth, it's like I'm not going to give them any outside. I'm setting boundaries for them. Yeah, very good question. Very good. Anyone else got a question? We've got 5 minutes. Yes, Daniel.
Just a comment.
You already had the mic.
On what you're talking about, when the age like 8 to 13, like me having kids that are older now. When I was young, I only had to look at my children and they'll know that I was upset. I didn't have to smack.
Yeah.
I just look and they knew, like, I'd stop what they're doing. As I get older, the look doesn't work no more, I think that maybe the discipline would have been a better way to go about it. But Tanya was always like, "Oh, don't smack the kids," you know what I mean? She wasn't into smacking and stuff like that. And as they got older, like to the age of, you're saying 8 to 13, 14, then she'd come to me and say, "Daniel, look, they're doing this," and we sort of had that argument, not bringing up my personal life here.
Sure.
But we had this
Somebody else's friend.
Yeah, just say it for a friend. We sort of had that argument that, you didn't let me discipline the kids when I was small.
Sure.
Now how do you want me to tackle this? So I think from a young age it's very important.
Sure.
But in saying that, as they got older, I see the real change, like you said, around 13, or when they hit high school.
Yeah.
One of my girls was school captain in primary school. School captain, trained athletics and stuff like that, and a good role model in primary school. Hit high school. Next minute, the people that she hung around, she was getting into fights, being suspended. And really doing no good in school at all, to the point where we actually ended up taking her out early at school because she was just a totally different person to this little girl that we raised up, you know what I mean? And I think it comes down to a lot of who they start to hang around as they get older. And that's the thing that as parents, as your kids get older, you've really got to scrutinise who they hang around. Because it's a big influence on them. As they get older.
Very good. And you're right. I mean, when you probably remember back to when you became a teen, it's just an absolute. It's just crazy. It's a crazy time. There's so much happening in your body, so much gone. You're starting to see the world. It's just an absolute insane time, becoming an adolescence, and so to have that foundation of boundaries and that's what teenagers they rely upon is having that training that's going to really be valuable to them when they're going through those years, because teenage years hormonally with influences like Daniel was saying, it's just absolute insanity. And so to have that stability, and I'm not saying that as an excuse that teenagers they get out of jail free card because of hormones and it's God's fault making it that way. No, but you know, it's going to help them getting in early. Del, did you have a comment or a question? Or?
Yeah, I was just going to say, off the back of Marcus's question, we had a bit of a learning curve because we had like no one sleep, like none of our kids sleep over other people's houses, and then we had an incident where we let them stay like for the day somewhere, and a bunch of people that we didn't know, we had no idea, we had no connection to them, came to the house, and so we input, then like it's a bit more extreme, but we put that we wouldn't even
leave them
anywhere at someone's house, because even with certain family members, like we've made a rule that we won't, because we don't know the people that actually come over, like just as an extra precaution. But yeah, just thought I'd
that's a good point. Absolutely. Yep. No, very good point. Once they're out of your care, that you can't, you know, you put them in someone else's care, you can't, there's, you know, you have less control. Yeah, very good. Does anyone else have a question? Someone else? No. Okay. We're going to finish there. Very good points raised, very good questions. If you have one, write it in the question box downstairs. If you're a parent, write it in the question box and we can look at that next week. God bless you. Have service in 5 minutes.